It's called Missing the Angels, and it starts with a quote. The only thing we are missing is angels. In this world, there's no place for them. And anyway, would our eyes recognize them? Perhaps we are surrounded by angels without knowing it. Henry Miller. I'm sitting in the dark, wood-paneled Beverly Hills office of Frank Sinatra's doctor, who is, unexpectedly, a well-groomed, middle-aged woman, Dr. Marion Rosenberg, quite motherly if your mother is a stern, slightly sympathetic junior high school principal, faintly judgmental around the eyes. It's 1987. There's an autographed picture of the chairman, old Blue Eyes himself, over her left shoulder, having it his way. The doctor is fumbling with her papers, my HIV test results. And she gives me that this is going to hurt me, etc. look. I have to tell you that you have tested positive for HIV. You're a time bomb waiting to go off. You probably have 5 years to live at the most. Well, it is early in the game. She can be forgiven for being somewhat unprepared to deliver such a message, imminent demise and so on. Not to mention no known cure or even an ameliorative response. In the intervening years when I have told this tale, such as right now, I always include the same line in response to her abject failure to come up with even a vaguely encouraging remark, or at the very least, a measured tone, thusly. Don't say that, with a wry chuckle, suggesting preternatural confidence and elan. And for the next 3 decades, I dined out on this imaginary bravado. Unless I really did say it. Nah. Pretty sure in actuality, I did not say a single word. I also know that at that very moment, I saw my son's face in my mind. That little guy, he was 9 years old. And that little guy was and remains, as a strapping 43-year-old man, the light, the lodestar, the lodgepole of my life. I did say to myself, well, I might deserve this, but he sure doesn't. He's not going to lose his dad. That part is absolutely true. I said it like a vow, like a prayer. But mostly, I just had that harsh, metallic taste of terror in my mouth, the whiff of shame in my nostrils, nausea roiling deep in my gut. I am as uncomfortable as I have ever been, ever. Sitting across the desk from Dr. Rosenberg, I feel utterly disclosed. I went directly from her office to see Jeff Rochford, chiropractor extraordinaire, just a few blocks away in Beverly Hills. Jeff was a true healer. You could see it in his clear blue eyes. You could feel it in his hands. He always spoke quietly, directly, without false assurances. I had no appointment, but he waved me back into his office anyway. He could see my stricken state. He listened to my results, then he said to me, "These are just numbers. You are healthy and very strong, and you're going to stay that way." Then I went straight to the airport to pick up my wife. An angel if there ever was one. I'd had the test, so we could be sure it was safe, given my history, to get pregnant. At the time, if either partner tested positive, that was deemed impossible. But we did, safely, twice. But that's another story with a whole other set of angels. A few days after my initial diagnosis, I went to see another angel, a holistic healer by the name of Bob Jacobs. Bob was a nice Jewish boy who was making his mother happy by becoming a doctor. However, he quickly became disgusted with the closed-mindedness of Western medicine. So had I, hippie that I was. Long before HIV came into our lives, I used homeopathic remedies for everything from poison oak to herpes. I had already been seeing Bob for a couple of years. After bailing on med school, Bob had lit out for the territories with adventurous notions, including crystals and magnets and the computer as a diagnostic tool, and to tap into the network of the most significant research and experimentation all over the world. He missed nothing, and therefore neither did I. Using all of his discoveries, he constructed a table, which, while laying on it for an hour, one came into perfect balance. Sounds goofy, but even super skeptic Susanna bought into it. In short, fucking guy was a visionary and something of a genius, and he flat out saved my life. And in 1997, Bob called me from London, where he was then living, and said, they're ready for you. They've found something called protease inhibitors, and it's going to work. So that means from 1987 to 1997, at the height of the plague, in the face of the incessant headlines telling me I would die any minute, I declined to avail myself of allopathic medicine of any kind. I took a pass on the most poisonous substance ever given to human beings as a remedy, AZT. To this day, I believe that shit killed more of my beautiful friends than the virus itself. This was a drug that medical professionals already had laying around on some back shelf. Having failed miserably as a cancer cure, it proved too lethal. They apparently thought, well, why not give it a try on these desperate faggots? After all, the pharmaceutical company had spent so much money developing it. Turned out it killed the virus, more or less, mostly less. But it's at the same time annihilated whatever personal immune system the victims had left, making a battleground out of their beleaguered bodies, while the men in white coats dropped their big bombs. When I first met my third healer angel, Dr. Paul Bellman, we had moved to Nyack, New York, two beautiful daughters in tow while Tavish attended NYU. Paul perused my medical records carefully and intently, and then he looked up to me and said very matter-of-factly, well, you're a hero. How'd you get the courage? After tearing up a bit, I told him that I was surrounded by angels who had given me unfailing support, wisdom, and love, heroic amounts of love. That was how. So I did survive that plague with intrepid trail guides showing me the path through the wilderness. You could certainly call them angels. And the upshot is I never got sick. Now they can't find the virus in me at all. And while it is true that sometimes I became terrified, felt despair and regret, shame and all the rest of it, mostly I kept that stuff to myself. When I really needed it, some angel would touch me on my shoulder and I'd get back on track. So yeah, I agree with Henry. I believe we are surrounded by angels without even knowing it most of the time. What's that Jackson Browne song? Too many angels have seen me crying. Well, let's let them see us. Maybe then we'll recognize them. Make a place for them. Let them hold us close. Sure worked for me.